So what do you reckon one simple way that parents, from your experience, can teach or talk to their kids about money without sounding too preachy?
Right. Well, the secret thing is that your teenagers, they are, in their minds, they are adults. They are fully fledged adults and they are absolutely begging you to treat them like an adult. And so one really interesting way to perhaps loop them into that conversation is to almost reward them for the maturity that they have displayed with a sneak peek and insight into some of your finances. And that doesn't mean showing them your income and all your bills and all that, but it might mean calling them over to the laptop and saying, hey, do you want to have a look at this email I just got through, this insurance bill or this electricity bill?
So
or
a bit of exposure therapy,
yeah,
age appropriate.
Yeah, just, hey, do you want to have a quick look at this one? Because I think it gives them a sense of being an adult and being let into your adult world, and they can see some real things. And, that could look like even, maybe whether you have an automated savings transfer that you have set up, or maybe you manually transfer your savings or investments across, is showing them how you do it.
Yeah.
And that quite simply creates that conversation, starts a conversation, creates that curiosity.
Yeah. And I know, I've said to a friend of mine, if your kids are having a tantrum that you can't buy them the new pair of Nikes or insert cool thing here for a teenager, that's $120. Come and have a look at this and I'll show you what we have to pay each month to keep this house, sounding old, but to literally keep the house running. And, I know that you say you don't need to show them a list of expenses, but at least that could be a tactic. Don't worry about our income. That's our business.
Yeah.
That as a member of this household, this is what we actually have to pay.
Exactly. And it's that interesting balance between giving them exposure to the real world without scaring them about the real world. And that is up to you as a parent and your judgment on where your child is at. And I think the really important thing to remember in all of this is it doesn't matter what you do or how you approach it, it's to keep a level of positivity into the conversation and optimism, even if it is, maybe it's you sharing stories on what not to do based on your personal experience. It's infusing a certain optimism into the conversation so that their association with the concept is positive. And so that you are signaling to your child that conversations about this topic are positive and they're judgment-free, and you are open to having these conversations when they do become more serious and more important down the track.
And it's probably speaking to the individual child and their interests because, John, who hosts the show with me sometimes, he's got 3 kids. One of them's like the saver and the other one's the shopper and all this stuff. And I just think it's an awareness, and that's why I wanted to have a chat with you today. But just you've got a lot of content that we'll talk about in today's episode that gets taught in some schools around Australia. From your experience, having all this content with teenagers, what do you reckon one or two of the big myths around money with teens?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when people look at our content, they often go, geez, that's a lot of financial education for a young person when you're competing with an already packed curriculum. But the reality is that a teenager does not need to walk out of school with the next, financial, with the financial expertise that an adult has. They just will not have that because their life stage isn't there yet. So it's no immediate interest for them yet. And so when you teach your child, whether that's at home, in the family home, or at school, the expectation is not for that child to
be 0 to 100 in day one.
Exactly. It's not a financial, technical expert. It's simply to have the exposure and get that conversation going so that when they do encounter it in the real world, they go, I've seen that before. I remember, Miss Johnson at school, she's telling me about so-and-so. you know what, I'm going to give that a Google because I have just enough exposure to it and context of where that topic kind of fits in to my space that I have the confidence to go and then research it or ask the right questions. So that, I would say, is a number one myth around teens, is you do not need to create teenagers or children that are experts in the topic. It's just to get them interested and engaged.
If someone has kids out there and they see a signal that, oh, hang on, this kid's asking about questions, what's another way that parents can start to introduce the concepts of money into the framework or the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we were talking about this before, about how, you often get people on the podcast that might have that imposter syndrome about, oh, well, I'm not an expert in this, I'm not an expert in that. And that applies directly to parents, saying, I'm not an expert in finances. So
economics.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't have much to tell my kids. In fact, I talked to a teacher the other day who literally said to me, she said, I get the shivers every time I think about teaching financial education at school. Like she goes, I get terrified. And the truth is that you are an expert in your own experience. And you have so many stories, war stories or win stories, as we like to call them, that you can share with your child that either teaches them what to do or what not to do. And it's about removing the shame in that from your end and realizing that you coming to the forefront and being vulnerable about that, and maybe you don't say all the details and all the specifics, but you being vulnerable about that creates that open space and that open conversation for your child to go, you know what, it's, having negative experiences or struggles with money is okay because I've seen mum and dad open up to me about it, and it's okay if I have them too, and I can engage with other people and share that, and in that way halve the problem when they're older. Because a lot of people, most people have some sort of struggle with their finances.
And I know in your if you are watching on YouTube, you can see here this is big fat textbook which we will talk about. When I was reading through this, so there's a heap of lessons that teachers use, and there's a whole digital program and all that they can plug in. One of the things, and actually we'll talk about it as soon as we the first thing we talk about, but I found it interesting with those war stories around when you talk about the debt cycle and teaching kids about the buy now, pay later and afterpay. It could be, once your father or your mother and I, we really wanted this thing, we kind of had the money, so we did that, but then because we did that 3 weeks later, something came up, but we didn't have the money because we overextended prior.
Exactly. And it's like, buying a car, if you don't have any context on what a car actually costs to own. I mean, a car costs for a young person literally just to have it on the road and drive it around every now and then, 5, 6, 7 grand a year.
Yeah.
And, that could be a lesson that you discovered when you were younger, and that's a lesson that was perhaps painful for you, and a very easy lesson to share with your child, and they can either choose to take that lesson or leave it, but giving them the information and saying, hey, you can go buy that secondhand, $4,000 car, but just heads up, when I did that when I was younger,
yes,
that came with a replacement of the engine and all those other costs that, a young person, until they experience it, they wouldn't have any clue. So I guess at the end of the day, what you're ultimately trying to do is reduce the dangerous trial and error. I mean, in learning how to be an adult, there's always a measure of trial and error. That is how you grow up. And you can't eliminate all of it. But when it comes to money, a lot of that trial and error can be dangerous.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it's reducing that.
Well, there you go. Today we are talking with Barbara. She has created the Mandy Money textbook for students.
Yeah, year 9 to 12.
Yeah, 9 to 12, big fat book. And we are going to continue to talk about this. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by Sphere Home Loans. Hey, if you want to get a mortgage, you need to go to a mortgage broker. If you've got a mortgage and you want it reviewed, go back to your current broker. If you want to upgrade the house, do a refi, have someone review your mortgage, go back to your mortgage broker, or if you don't have a mortgage broker, Sphere Home Loans. They've got a dedicated team that help listeners of the show. There's links below and all that stuff. But until then, let's continue the discussion with Barbara.
Hello, Glenn.
Hello.
Good to be here.
Thanks for coming. You're listening to Money, 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 or as the regulars like to call us, M3. Everything discussed on the podcast is general advice only, which I'm licensed to give, and details can be found in the show notes. My name's Glen James, former financial advisor, now podcaster. I host this show and a show called Retire Right. I've also got a book called The Quick Start Guide to Investing, which you can check out wherever good books are sold, or there's a link in the show notes. Otherwise, thanks so much for listening today. Now on with the show. So Barbara, tell us maybe the context. You created the Mandy Money textbook. It's really fat and big and huge, and you've got it in schools all around Australia.
Yeah, roughly 200.
Yeah, that's awesome.
200 schools, yeah.
And it's a guide to assist teachers to plug this into the curriculum.
Exactly. So it's completely removing the need for having confidence and expertise in what is a very complicated and technical area.
Yeah. So what was kind of your experience with money and learning about money in kind of your late teens, early 20s, first job? Talk to us about your own experience and how that started to shape this wonderful curriculum.
100%. So I always say there are kind of three key points and three reasons why we are where we are today and what we do and what we offer. And the first, as any good founder story starts, was a personal pain point. Money was something that had quite negative associations growing up, coming from a migrant family, having migrated 4 times. Before the age of 12, money is definitely something that gets associated with a bit of stress and other negative feelings. And so I went and studied a commerce degree in an attempt to educate myself on that particular topic, which I was very aware was a blind spot for me. Got into commerce, realised, they teach you how to do a discounted cash flow and, corporate finance. But
that's cute, but
yeah, that's good to know. But when it came to actually doing anything functional with my personal finances, there was next to nothing. And it was really interesting. The point where I got my first dose of good financial education, personal financial education, was at my first job, or one of my first jobs. I was switching over from being an employee to a contractor. Talked to the HR lady called Lisa, lovely, lovely human. She used to be a financial planner. And she was telling me, hey, you can do this, but you have to charge a higher rate because as a contractor, you don't get paid super, you don't get paid leave, you have to deal with your own tax. There's a lot more involved. And I just sat there.
Nice of her to tell you.
Right, because I could have easily just invoiced for my whatever it was, 25 an hour or whatever, not cared, not known. And I sat there and I was like, what do you mean? And so then she explained to me everything to do with super, everything to do with tax and all those basics. And I sat there, I was like, well, why don't I know this? I'm like 21. Is that not wild that I've gotten through a very good education up to that point? Really good high school education, and then went into commerce, and still there was that learning gap. And this is where the second point comes in. Went back armed with my information, and started realizing that no one else knew this stuff either. And I felt like an absolute, the fountain of financial knowledge, armed with my understanding of what tax was. And so then that snowballed into creating a Instagram page, Mandy Money. That was about 5 years ago, where we just, tell everyone who had a pair of ears about basic concepts. And then through that, we started interacting with different stakeholders, schools and universities or tertiary education providers, employers, government, realised that there's a systemic issue. And that's where the third point comes in, really realising that a child or a person at no point in their life is guaranteed to get this information. And so then going, well, where is the best place to put it? And at that point for us, that decision was in high school. So it's right as they're going into the real world. So they're
First job vibe, year 9.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that interest for the first time and that relevance is actually there. And so you kind of capture them in that space. And then from there you unravel more and more questions. And obviously not all kids have these questions, but a lot of them do. You start talking about, their first job, and then they go, oh, well, I have this savings. What do I do then? And then you can get into topics of investing and they go, oh, well, what about buying a house? And you're like, oh, well, let me introduce you to you the concept of debt. And, it unravels so many different questions. And what always surprises me is how curious kids actually are, especially in this generation, because they get so much information and exposure to making money online that isn't, in fact, is very rarely good information when they're getting it from TikTok and it's influencers from overseas and running around in their Lamborghinis and that sort of content. But
it's also wild out there. Like my niece is 15, driving around the Gold Coast on a $5,000 electric scooter. Like, give me a break. That's not normal.
No.
Hi, Grace.
I'd love a scooter like that, to be honest.
Like, privilege much? All that stuff. Like,
oh, it's huge.
and then it's just like, okay, so when it comes to the real world, your experience of getting what you want, that's going to end at some point.
Well, that's
And the
it.
good thing is, like, she's got her first part-time job at a
Yeah.
clothes shop. So, while she might get some nice gifts from people, she is faced with that reality that, I've just worked an hour and got $8, or I don't even know what the minimum wage for a 15-year-old is.
A little bit more than 8.
Yeah, whatever it is, $15. So I'm just,
That would be.
I don't know. I'm out of touch. There you go.
Yeah, but it's interesting because a story that I always reflect on is, the concept of privilege. I think a lot of people don't realise how privileged they are. And in my case, it was one example of extreme privilege was when I bought my first car, I financed it through the bank of mum and dad. It was 10 grand, loan from mum and dad. And I was at the age of 18, the worst ever borrower ever. I would go months and months and months and months, just not shooting over $1, and then, I'd send over, oh, here you go, $200, mum and dad. Well, thank you. And, that was a learning curve for me, because that was a great fallback for me, because it was not a real lender that was reporting my lending behaviour to a credit agency. But many kids don't have that. So they go out of school and they make these huge financial decisions, and all of a sudden they're on the completely wrong foot. They've got a terrible credit score. They've started off in debt. And then once you're in that space, the mental space, the psychology of trying to escape that if you're already so far into it is really hard.
Yeah, that's actually I actually bookmarked on page 305 of your big brick.
400 and something.
Yeah, 400 or whatever. You've got a whole section around safety, and you've got this page, how does my mental health, how does money impact my mental health? So, we've got some emotions, feeling unsafe, low self-esteem, relationship tension, less brain power. From what you're hearing back from educators, like, is it resonating with teens? Because I guess it's all stress and anxiety is relative to something.
Exactly. Well, we work in lots of different schools, And it's really interesting across the public, private, Catholic sectors. And it's really interesting how different sections of the book resonate with different populations. And we actually had a teacher that at a state school in Melbourne, they were implementing the program for the year 9, 10s and 12s. And this teacher we gave an introductory speech for the program, and he kind of gave an opening speech. And I didn't realise this at the time, but in his speech, he basically came out and said when he was younger, when he was the age of a lot of these kids in the room, his family declared bankruptcy. And the room went completely silent, and you could just see that so many of these kids for the first time, kind of listened in and went, whoa, like that is a really big deal. And so when it comes to talking about mental health and money, a lot of kids, whether they admit it or not, are already impacted by their family situations or perhaps this stress or anxiety of entering the real world because they've been exposed to home situations or external situations that indicate to them and tell them the story that it's going to be tough out there once they leave school. So whether or not it resonates in the classroom, that very particular lesson you've got there, it is something that is so critically important to expose these kids to and get them in that conversation that linking money and mental health is a really important link and there's nothing to be ashamed of and it's worth paying attention to and acknowledging. So go ahead.
So for the teachers listening or the educators or the stakeholders who think this might be, because a lot of people will say to me, and even, we had lunch before and you said, oh, what's your view about, what was your question, like kids and money or something like that?
Educating kids.
Yeah, I don't heaps have a view, and a lot of people say to me, oh, the stuff you talk about on the podcast should be taught in school. What do you think? My answer to that is there should be lots of stuff taught at school. That's not my wheelhouse, designing curriculum, nor is it my wheelhouse doing this type of stuff. Yeah. So I actually don't have a view on it. Once they leave school and come into my world, I can skill them up right away. However, for the educators and the people thinking how does this plug into the curriculum, one awesome thing that you've got in here, you've got the alignment guides to the Australian curriculum.
Absolutely.
So we've got Year 9 and Year 10, we've got maths, humanities, and you've got the codes, AC, 9M, whatever the code is. So
exactly.
It does actually plug in to the curriculum.
Yeah.
So having said that, I'm looking at there's a program here or a little worksheet, if you will.
Yes.
And so that can be put onto the digital device that the kids have, and the teachers can go through this. And
that's it. So one of the key things for us at Mandy Money is accessibility. So this program that we have, it comes in every shape or delivery format that you could want. So we've got a teacher version. We can deliver it by PowerPoint and print out the worksheets.
Yeah.
We've got a teacher and a student textbook. So if you just want to go hard copy, and I know this can be very popular in schools that don't have great technology access. And then we also have, for schools that do prefer students to have their own access, we have a student version so they can complete the worksheets digitally via a digital program where it's got an element of gamification in there.
So an example here, how does money impact my mental health? We've got 4 questions. Ella avoids checking her bank account because she's scared of what she'll find. Bills are piling up, but she'd rather not think about it. So we can choose a main emotion felt, short-term impact or long-term impact. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, do we add?
So you choose
okay. So the main emotion is fear, hopelessness, embarrassment, regret, and insecurity. So that would be fear, wouldn't it?
Yes, I don't have it in front of me, but it sounds about right.
The short-term impact, and then there's like A, B, C, D. So avoids catching up with friends, feels stressed and anxious because of overdue bills, gets caught up in feelings of jealousy. So I think it would be B, the short-term impact, feels stressed and anxious because of overdue bills. And the long-term impact, there's, A to E that they can choose. So it's age-appropriate workbooks, educational level curriculum, if you will, appropriate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just think it's so cool to start to talk about this stuff, because I'm sure that this, I've just opened up and I thought the mental health one was interesting. I think it's really cool that you are providing options. So teachers go, oh, I think this would be good to talk about the soft things about mental health.
Exactly.
Like boys, you're allowed to say, I feel sad. Yeah. I feel scared.
Yes.
All that stuff.
And it's naming those emotions, because even as adults, and I'm sure a large portion of your audience will understand, / every human being on the planet would understand, is sometimes you just avoid opening your bills, looking at your bank account, paying that fine. And a big part of that is you just don't it's emotional management as opposed to the actual act of looking at it. You don't have an inability to open an envelope. It's managing your emotions and learning to actually name your emotions and understand what's going on in your head is really important. And honestly, when it comes to a lot of this money stuff, for me, what I find more fascinating and what I think is the bigger challenge to undertake is the psychology behind money. The technical components are definitely, they deserve their time in the sun, and they are really, understanding what interest is. They're necessary lessons in that math space. But the psychology behind why we do things with money and why we act in certain ways is a really powerful key. And that's why it's so important to get it, to younger kids, and especially even younger than that. They say that your money mindsets and attitudes are locked in by age 7.
Yeah. Gosh.
So focusing on creating that awareness and understanding and being able to get psychology on your side with your money, I think that's why it's so important to get it in early.
I want to read another one from this. Mia feels awkward talking about money with her mates. She earns less than them, so she avoids hanging out when it might cost cash. Mm-hmm. So kids can go, okay, well, that's maybe around the main emotion of embarrassment.
Yep. Yep.
And then, what's the short-term impacts? Well, it could make you avoid catching up with friends and feeling lonely or left out.
Yeah.
The long-term impact, friendships suffer and she feels more isolated and less confident over time.
Yeah.
So on that, I had a look before. You're right. The casual rate for retail employee level 1 under 16 years of age is $14.43. So
touch higher than 8, but not much.
When I say stuff and people are like, no, you're wrong, I'm like, I need to know.
Well, it's so tricky. You should know off the top of your head, but because all the awards are different, depending on where they work and whatnot, I always and they change. So,
but anyway, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about more cool stuff in this textbook. We'll be back right after this.
If you're after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. But if you want guidance tailored to your situation, head to moneypodcast.com.au and click Get Help. We'll connect you with one of our trusted professionals, financial advisors and mortgage brokers, who work with people right across Australia. No matter where you are, they can help. Now, before we get back to the show, a quick reminder to protect your financial life. That means having income protection sorted. It means having death cover if there's any debt or dependents relying on you. It means getting your personal insurance in order. Most people insure their car, they insure their house, but what about themselves? Sky Wealth, who support this podcast, are specialist financial advisors who can help you get the right cover in place. Their advice is often more comprehensive and better value than going direct through your super. Book a complimentary 15-minute chat at sky.com.au. That's skye.com.au. And they'll point you in the right direction.
Okay, we're back. I could not help myself. I have opened the page 410, and if you're not on YouTube watching this is literally like a ream of paper. That's the size of it. When you go to Officeworks, grab a ream of paper.
Yeah.
This is what you're grabbing. This textbook is huge. Before I talk about this next section that I want to test myself with, if there was, and I don't know enough about schooling, but if I've got a listener who is a teacher, do they get the latitude to do their own lesson planning, provided it's within the curriculum? So could a teacher listening to this go to your website, and we'll put a link in the show notes and the details on YouTube to your website. Could they individually buy this book?
Yeah, absolutely. So the beauty of this book is it's packaged into this. So there's 108 pages, or we call them learning chapters. So a learning chapter is one page of theory, it's fully illustrated, and then one worksheet. So you can use that and flip through, chop and, pick what you like. Or we also bundle the whole program into 42 different lessons. So if you literally just want to pick a lesson, you go, bang, I've got the PowerPoint, I've got the theory videos, I've got the worksheets, off we go. So it's really up to you how you use it. And we find that there are two really interesting use cases. It's either individual careers, commerce, maths teachers that buy their own copy of the book or their own digital teacher pass, and they just use it as they need. They pick certain pages, pick certain lessons, and it's basically a resource of theory that's age appropriate and enjoyable, and it's illustrated and it's nice, so you can use it to supplement what you're already teaching. Or our second use case is schools, and more schools are doing this, which I absolutely love, is they're creating dedicated financial education electives for their students.
So the schools do have the latitude to teach stuff within the curriculum and all the codes that you have in this book.
That's it. So it's really, we've got to be careful here. It's a little bit like accounting. It's a little bit science, a little bit of an art form. So how teachers choose to match up to the curriculum codes is up to them. We provide, a multitude of different curriculum codes that they could be relevant for them.
Yeah.
But we are exploring partnerships with an AI teachers help program
to help plug it in.
Exactly, to take our content, supercharge it, and basically allow a teacher to go, hey, I want this content, but create activities that are relevant to code X, X, and X, because that is what I want to be teaching my kids. So it's using the content and the theory as a base, and you've got that A to Z structure.
Why don't you lean into that as your core business model for all the curriculum?
Oh, it really should actually.
Yeah,
create that underlying content. Yeah.
Anyway, so all that to say, individual teachers can jump on your website, buy a copy, have a flip through.
They can buy a copy, and it's there's lots of different versions of it in terms of digital hard copy.
And if it sounds like I'm selling and promoting this book, it's because I am. Barbara hasn't paid me to come on this show. We'll share maybe later how we met. It was a bit random. Number two, I can't see any reason for engaged parents to jump on and buy a copy if they want to use it in their own house.
That's it. It's a resource, and we are working on resources for parents and individuals, young people. But the actual content in there is absolute gold. And, as someone who is, very self-critical of work that I produce, it is honestly the best thing since sliced bread for young people and finances, because it's this beautiful, illustrated.
I can't believe how much work has gone into this.
It is like just a really good resource, and it could literally be something that you on a Thursday night dinner, the conversation's a bit low. You go, right, we're just going to pick up
kids,
a random page.
We're going to do some fun tonight.
And it's not, like Glenn, you can attest to this. It doesn't feel like a finance book in any way, shape or form.
Feels like a ream of paper. So you've got a whole chapter on investing, which we'll get to.
Yes.
But I probably haven't promoted this enough for you. But do you know, like you've got, is there like an index? Where is the...
No, it should be up the front.
Oh, yeah, here we
There,
go, here we go. So these are all the things that's involved with everyone. Basic budgeting, expenses deep dive, smart spending, intro to super, which is cool because like Grace, my niece, she just started her first job. Guess what? She's got a super account.
Yep.
Super fund basics, choosing your super fund. So 3 big sections on super.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important because that's for a lot of people going to be their biggest lifetime asset.
Mm-hmm.
Tax, boring, but it's in there. It's important.
Well, it is. And it's also, especially with the politics or the elections recently, understanding how your vote influences.
That's right. And then so you've got a lot on, and it goes on. But this investing thing, there's an activity here which is, I think, really cool. How do I interpret investing news? And you've also got, like any good curriculum book, for year 9 and 10, you have the maths and the economics, business and civics and citizenship codes. So educators can plug in this to, that vibe. And this activity is below are a series of headlines and scrambled set of explanations. Match the explanation to the headline by writing the corresponding letter of each in the blank newspaper section. I'm going to see if I can do this. I haven't pre-read. Okay, the first one. Geez, you really teach people because the first one is inflation eases for the first time in months. Okay, let's have a look here.
Which is a headline that you'll absolutely see in not just the AFR but on your, daily news.
Where's your E maybe? The Reserve Bank increased interest rates, which means borrowing money is more expensive to help slow down rising prices.
Sounds right to me.
Yeah. Next one.
Yep.
Stock markets tumble amid uncertainty. Oh my gosh, big headlines. Okay, well, what could that mean?
That's been a big headline recently.
Yeah.
At time of recording.
Yeah. Stock prices dropped sharply due to concerns about the economy, making investors nervous. So, I mean, if I can do that, probably a 5th grader could because I'm a bit basic.
Well, it's a little bit, and any good exercise, I think, for kids is 50% of it should be they should get straight, they should be able to make those link, and the rest is deduction, and that's where the extension learning happens because the first bit is stuff that they already knew. The second bit where they have to actually figure it out and deduce answers, that's where the extension learning is.
Man, this one, safety, what can I do to avoid scams? I need to send this to my parents as a...
That's a big one. That's
a thing.
That was... so the reason the textbook is so big is we had a much skinnier version last year, and then throughout the year we had teachers emailing us going, "Hey, can you add this one? Can you add this topic? Can you add this topic?" And when you look at it, it's so hard to take away because all of these topics, I would say there is maximum 1 or 2 topics that you could possibly take out of that book and not deem essential for a young person to have at least had exposure to.
And I think as well, like everything is child dependent. So if a parent had this and they had 3 kids, they might know that, okay, I'll talk about this one with this child and this one for that child. Teachers would know that, I think this class here would probably vibe this exercise today, not that exercise.
Exactly. And I mean, having spent so much time in the classroom teaching elements of this curriculum, no 2 schools are the same and no 2 classrooms are the same in terms of what they're interested in and what their competency levels are, partially because sometimes they've learnt some of this stuff before, depending on where the school is and what they prioritise. So and that's why the book is designed to be flexible because it lets you choose what your students or what your kids are actually going to resonate with and find relevant.
It's even got basic stuff in there about setting up a government ID and my ID, which is very current.
Yeah.
One thing I think is very important is there's a whole module here about teaching kids about odds with gambling and how the odds aren't in their favour at all.
No.
So imagine that, learning that gambling equals bad.
Yeah.
As you grow up going, no, I don't do that because I learned and I got the behaviour that, no, it's bad and it's a waste of money.
Yeah. And it's just understanding even the economics behind, you know, like you've got the house, who's the one that organises the gambling, and then you're the person on the other end. And even just simply connecting to a child's brain, like, hey, getting advertising at the MCG or whatever arena you go to watch sport, getting advertising there is silly expensive.
Yeah.
And when 90% of the ads are betting ads, they are making a lot of money. And how are they making money? From the people gambling. So that just tells you that the people gambling are not the ones winning. And it's creating those sorts of connections in their brain that they start to just think differently and critically analyse the world around them, which, I don't know, I find it so fascinating, and I hope other people do too. But because money often gets a really kind of grubby connotation, and I know a lot of people don't want to expose their kids to the concept because they want to protect them from what can be quite a yucky conversation or connotations, but it's fascinating when you dive into it. It's really interesting.
100%. And I love how you've got a whole section on the real world, and you've got the cost of car ownership.
It's very popular.
I'm looking here and I was about to kind of be mad at you, but I won't. So you've got how do I buy tech, and you've got some, you know, an activity with, and you talk about, for example, there is this rent-to-own service, which I'm like, oh, don't know about that. But the good thing is you say this is actually debt.
Yes. Yes. And
that's why I was like having a stroke going, no, why are we telling kids about this? But no, this is because this is really important. This is out there.
Yeah.
This is available, but this is what it actually is.
It's like, you know, the question of, do you teach kids about the birds and the bees?
Or do you just
let them? Yeah.
Did I just say that on my podcast?
I think you did. Like, do you let them? Once again, it's that trial by error, but the error can be really dangerous. So, and then you'll find in the activity, you calculate all your different options, and that option, the rent to own, is by far the worst option. So
you're lucky that we can still have this podcast go to air, Barbara.
And the other reality is the book is designed for every Australian, regardless of where they come from. And the truth is, for a large majority of the population to get access to the necessary technology to educate, you know, to maybe go to university or progress their lives, consumer debt is sometimes, you know, one of the only options that they might feel is available to them. So educating them around how to choose the best debt and how to get out of it, and
I really love this, and this is probably a good one for like north of year 10 because it is 9 to 12.
Book kind of progresses along.
How do I move out of home? How awesome's that? There's a whole section on that. But everyone,
we could go on forever.
I could go on forever. I'm frothing on this. A couple of things. I'm going to send this podcast episode to a long-term friend of mine. His name's Aaron Johnson. He's a school teacher. He runs a podcast, everyone, called the Teacher Takeaway Podcast. I'm just on the website here now. Welcome to the Teacher Takeaway Podcast. It's hosted by 4 Australian teachers. The purpose of this podcast is to provide educators with practical takeaway ideas to implement with their classroom or school setting. Your hosts, Aaron Johnson, Elise Vigers, sorry, Elise, haven't met you, but there you go, Rebecca West and James Gray. So I'm going to send this episode to Aaron. And Aaron, I want you to listen to this and I want you to reply to my message, and I'm going to connect you with Barbara because I think it would be very awesome for you to go on their podcast at some point.
Absolutely. Another trip up to.
Well, I think they do remote, but
Okay. Yep.
So that's number one. Number two, check out. Oh, before we actually go, talk to me. What you've got something in the works for? Because I know we've talked a lot about teens.
Yeah.
What are we teaching for under fives? What have you got in the works?
So, jumping back to that concept that attitudes and behaviours and mindsets are largely set by the age of 7. We've been wondering, what do we do? Because once again, you don't want to expose your kids to these things prematurely in the wrong way. And so a lot of parents, they come to us and go, how do we do this? We don't want to do it wrong. So I've partnered up with the most awesome lady called Abby Melbourne. She is an accountant, a very good one at that, and a mother of 2. And we have created this really cool book called Smart Cookies. And it's an interactive board book. And the focus is on connecting the concept of spending and earning and your bank balance going up and down. And that seems like a really basic thing or irrelevant thing, but Abby was telling me how her two-year-old picked up a gold coin, went to the the cashier, and started tapping the gold coin on the tap machine, thinking that they were tapping and that's how they get money out that way. So they're not growing up in a world where cash will even be a thing, really.
No.
It'll be a novelty. And so connecting to young kids that money lives in the cloud, but it's a finite resource we won't get into the conversations of abundance and, and scarcity, but it's a finite resource in your bank account, connecting those two topics.
Yeah, and it's really cool because it's like, what do you call it? Like what type of book is it?
It's a board book.
A board book.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then, so you open it, I've seen it.
Yeah.
And the kid can get their finger and move
Exactly.
a physical thing, and the numbers change when they move the money. So all that to say, that's on the website that we'll put below.
That's it. We are actually running a Kickstarter campaign at this very second. So you can simply grab your copy and that goes towards a Kickstarter campaign. But
So the Kickstarter, is that thing where you crowdfund it?
You fund a project.
What are you after? How
we
much?
are after $5,000. So it's very, it's a very low goal, but we're selling the copies.
The Kickstarter up at the time of recording right now?
Yes.
What's it called? Kickstarter?
Oh, sorry, no, not.
Okay, I won't bring it up now. I'm just interested because I might help you out there. So
yeah.
Get in that, everyone. If you've got kids, or if you're about to have a kid, or if you want a gifts for first-year-old birthdays or anything like that.
That's it. And it's a book that, yes, money is the primary learning, but ultimately the lessons are lots to do around numeracy, so counting 1 to 5, and then for older kids you can count up to 30, and then
wow, I would enjoy that one.
Yeah, it's a big one. But then as a entrepreneur myself, I love that mindset, and I think it's such an important skill for young people growing up. I think it's a critical skill. The book kind of has that entrepreneurship concept throughout, and also the focus on generosity and community. So it's a very light-hearted, fun little book, and you won't feel like you're teaching anything because it's written in a way that's so enjoyable and nice and friendly. So yeah, it's a really cool little project.
So that'll be on the Mandy Money website.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay. So anything else we need to sell to everyone? We need to sell forward this episode to a educator of any sort, stakeholder. If you're friends with the education minister, send it to them.
Absolutely.
All that stuff.
Yeah, 100%. And we're always open to working on, we are very responsive to what our audience is after and what parents and young people are after. So if there's a particular area that you go, I really want education in that space or in this format, please feel free to reach out to us. We love getting in touch with our community.
And my next challenge is to try and convince Barbara to a book for late teens, early 20s money book, investing book. That's what we're going to do, everyone. We're going to try and do a collab. That's our goal here.
We got to work on that.
Thank you, Barbara, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Again, you can get the Mandy Money workbook online. What's the website?
www.mandymoney.com.au.
Awesome. And we'll see you soon. Actually, we'll do an after party because I'll tell everyone how we met because that was fun
Okay.
and random.
PS.
All right, friends, if you don't know what an after party is, after the end credits run on the podcast, we just talk shop. So thank you so much. We'll see you soon. Bye.
See ya.
Any advice is general financial advice only, which does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Because of that, you should consider if the advice is appropriate to you and your needs before acting on the information. If you do choose to buy a financial product, read the Product Disclosure Statement, PDS, and Target Market Determination, TMD, and obtain appropriate financial advice tailored to your needs. Simo Interactive Pty Ltd, the publisher of this podcast, and Glen James are authorised representatives of Money Sherpa Pty Ltd, which holds financial services license 451289. Opinions or comments from any guests on the podcast are theirs and not those of the host or the publisher or their respective license holders.
Okay, so what month was that?
Budget month.
March? Was it in March? April? Whatever. When the federal budget was happening,
April.
I went to Parliament House as one of the influencers and all that stuff to do the budget. And that's when I ran into you
Yes.
at Parliament House. I just finished, if you've been there, in the Great Hall or whatever it is, you walk in, upstairs there's a cafe to the left. I'm like, I'll go and have some lunch before I've got to go in. And walking out of the cafe, I hear a Glen. And when I hear that, I think he came up to me, whatever.
Yeah.
Did you say my name, maybe?
Yeah, no, I know I did. I couldn't. I was like, was it James or was it Glen?
Yeah. Every time I hear the word Glen in a situation, do you know my first response?
No, I don't want.
No.
Don't want an autograph.
No, it's not that. I say to myself, here we go. Because sometimes you people are crazy. And then within about 2 seconds, I know, like, they're cool, they're chill.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
So you'd obviously
Didn't quite get
seen
the crazy eyes.
the podcast or the Instagram before.
Yeah, super fan.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, what are you doing? And that's why if you follow us on Instagram, you'll see a reel that I did promoting this book. And because I was only there overnight, I had a full bag. Because it was so big, I'm like, can you please just post me a copy? I literally can't fit it.
Do you know what was funny? I'd already handed that in. So, fun fact, the Parliament House has a post office inside open to the public. And they stamp sent from Parliament House, which I thought, really cool. So I was up there sending a copy just randomly because I had a stack of them and I didn't want to have to take them back home to Melbourne. That an order that had just come through to one of our lovely repeat customers up in Queensland, Anna Bench. And then when I saw Glen, I was like, oh, well, you'll have to come with me back to the post office. I went back to the post office.
That's right.
And I was like, oh, can I have the book back? And showed Glen the book. And
here we are.
Yeah.
So what were you doing at Parliament House?
So I was doing a conference. Yep. So
what was the conference?
The ASPA conference. So it's Australian Secondary Principals Association. So it's state principals, and we were exhibiting there and showcasing what we offer to principals from all around Australia. But it was budget day that day.
It was hectic.
It was crazy. Were you there for the when there were people that protesting in the?
No, I think I just missed that.
They'd super glue their hands to the.
Yeah, I know. I was annoyed I missed that. I love a bit of
wild.
love a bit of drama.
Yeah.
If I'm not involved.
Yeah. But no, it was an awesome day, and that was a great little run in.
Yeah, so thanks for saying hi.
Yeah. No worries.
Yeah. Good food at that little cafe up there.
They did. I had a falafel Buddha bowl.
I had a burger. I had
Yeah.
a burger. It was awesome. Yeah,
Great,
cool. So thanks for coming on the after party as well.
No,
So
this
we
is the
just
first
talk-
after party I've been to.
Yeah, we just talk crap at the after party, but I appreciate you coming up to the studio. Anything else you want to say?
Not really.
How did you feel that went, the episode?
It's always at the start, it's always a bit nervy. I actually did a radio interview last year, and it was my first ever radio interview,
You did good.
2GB,
Yeah.
and it was in Sydney.
Oh, you went on 2GB.
Yeah.
Boomer radio.
Yeah,
Did you go into the studio? Or?
Went into the studio,
Yeah.
and I was so nervous that, like, I think I was having some sort of attack or something because my face went so red.
Really?
I'd never gone that red before, never.
Like it's red now. No, joking.
So, but I was so nervous at that, and that's all pretty much live. So, it kind of goes live
Yeah.
a couple minutes after you.
Yeah, I
speak.
went in there I forget what I was talking about, but I went in and did an interview a couple of months ago.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
forget what it was, but it's good you got on there.
Well, yeah, it was. But it was my first time doing anything of that size or scale, and I think after that, everything else seems less intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
But no. Well, how did you think it went?
It's fine.
Yeah,
I'm happy.
good.
Happy. All right, I got to go, but we'll talk soon.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.